Are you the strongest because you're Satoru Gojo, or are you Satoru Gojo because you're the strongest? We know that this famous phrase from Jujutsu Kaisen was asked by Satoru Gojo when he was putting this question in Gojo's mind of whether or not Gojo had an identity because of himself, or whether or not he had an identity because of his strength. And I do just want to say that although the fight with Yuta and Sukuna has just begun, it is becoming more apparent as each page goes on that Satoru Gojo was the strongest because of who he was. And for anyone that might be a bit confused on why people say this, yes, of course, the 6 eyes did help Gojo in terms of his strength, no doubt. But just because Gojo had the 6 eyes and the limitless technique was not the only reason he was the strongest, and this is becoming more apparent as Yuta is fighting inside of Gojo's body. Also, about 11% of you guys that watch the channel are subscribed, so if you haven't subbed and enjoyed the videos, then please try it out. There are a couple reasons that we know this, and I'll just get into the first reason of them all. And the first reason that we got in this short chapter was the fact that even though Yuta is expanding Unlimited Void, he has to use his own skill at expanding and using barrier techniques. It's not just the skill that Gojo had. So for example, we know that whenever you use a domain expansion, you churn your curse energy, manifest it into the form of a domain expansion, and imbue it with your curse technique. But even though Yuta's inside of Gojo's body has the 6 eyes to help him do this and the limitless technique, he still says that doing switch training with Gojo is what's helping him use Unlimited Void at this level. And even though Yuta is saying that the switch training he did with Gojo helped him elevate his barrier techniques, this is not Yuta saying that doing the switch training with Gojo helped him be Gojo level with barrier techniques. So we don't even know if this domain expansion is as powerful as Gojo's. If I had to guess, I would say not. And just for clarification for anybody who's unsure, the switch training was something that Ui allowed other sorcerers to do, meaning that Yuta switched with Gojo's body, before the Sukuna fight, and while being inside of Gojo's body, he got better at using his own techniques. We know this because it is explained that Yuji was better at using some techniques because Sukuna was performing high-level sorcery inside of Yuji's body, and since Sukuna was performing high-level sorcery inside of Yuji's body, Yuji naturally was able to perform high-level sorcery easier. So it's the same thing that Yuta did with Gojo. Before Gojo went and fought Sukuna, Yuta went inside of Gojo's body and trained. We don't know the exact amount of time that Yuta spent inside of Gojo's body, but the main point here is Yuta is not unfamiliar with using Gojo's techniques inside of Gojo's body, as we know he did this before Gojo ever went to go fight with Sukuna. So it's not like Yuta for the first time ever is having to get used to being inside of Gojo's body. He trained inside of Gojo's body before. But even with all of this training in mind, Yuta is also underperforming in terms of hand-to-hand combat. Now granted, they've only had one physical exchange so far, but this physical exchange is enough to give us some information on how much Yuta is really beneath Gojo while inside of Gojo's body. And by the way, we don't know exactly how much weaker Yuta is than Gojo, but we definitely know he's weaker. For example, we see that Yuta tries to use a blue in order to attract Sukuna towards him, but Sukuna, with only 2 hands, runs up on Yuta, uses one of his arms that doesn't have a hand, knocks Yuta's arm down, then uses his other hand and punches Yuta in the face before Yuta can physically react. Now, although looking back and just recalling the Gojo versus Sukuna fight, you might be inclined to believe that Gojo and Sukuna are equal in terms of hand-to-hand combat. And I wouldn't blame you for thinking that, as we did see a lot of physical exchanges between Gojo and Sukuna, but if you skim back through the fight and look at all of these physical exchanges, you'll see that Gojo wins the vast majority of hand-to-hand situations with Sukuna. Sukuna almost never lands clean blows on Gojo, but Gojo is always landing clean blows on Sukuna, even outspeeding him at times when they're using hand-to-hand combat. Although the gap is not massive, Gojo definitely was slightly above Sukuna in terms of hand-to-hand combat while in their fight, but we see that Yuta here was not even able to react to a weakened Sukuna who was only at half of his CE amount while also missing 2 hands. And when talking about Sukuna being weakened here, it's not just CE amount. that is one of the reasons why Sukuna is weakened. We know that Sukuna has taken a lot of soul black flashes from Yuji up to this point, also has been stabbed in the soul by Maki's sword, and also took the Angel's technique while inside of Yuta's domain expansion earlier. So we know that Sukuna has a lot of accrued damage up to this point. It got to the point where Yuta was literally about to attempt to rip Sukuna's heart out, and Sukuna thought the best way to get rid of him was to use a domain expansion before Yuta pulled up. But even with Sukuna in that state, he is still outperforming Yuta. The importance behind this is pretty much telling us if Gojo himself had come back, I think Sukuna probably would be near death right now, or if not near death, seriously getting beat up. There's no way in the current condition Sukuna is in, he would ever outdo Gojo in any type of hand-to-hand combat, especially since we saw that a fresher, healthier Sukuna in their first fight was losing hand-to-hand situations more often than not to Gojo. Now, does Yuta still have enough time to prove himself? Yes, it is a chance that Yuta can prove himself in the future, but just that domain barrier statement alone is enough to let us know that Gojo's strength is not inherently the result of these 6 eyes and Limitless, because Yuta is saying that this domain expansion is contingent upon how good Yuta is at using barrier techniques. Even though he's in Gojo's body, even though he's using the 6 eyes, which allows you to have fine control over curse energy, we see that even with all of this in mind, this domain expansion that Yuta is using right now is contingent on Yuta's ability to use barrier techniques. It's not contingent on the 6 eyes and the Limitless ability to use barrier techniques. Instead, it is Yuta's ability to use barrier techniques. Now, you might be wondering, well, how does it make sense that Yuta is any weaker than Gojo? He is literally inside of Gojo's body and is also using the 6 eyes, which allows you to have fine control over curse energy. So anything like curse techniques or movement or barrier techniques should come easy to Yuta, correct? Well, Gege decided to take a different route with this than most readers expected. You see, although he is inside of Gojo's body and is using the 6 eyes and Limitless technique, Gojo is not only more experienced, but also has a better intuition at fighting than Yuta does, which is why Yuta, although being inside of Gojo's body, is naturally not going to be as good as Gojo is. We also know that doing this Swiss training with Gojo, Yuta says elevated Yuta's barrier techniques, which is Yuta just outright saying that Gojo is a better user of barrier techniques than he is. So although you can go inside of Gojo's body, you do not have the same intuition that Gojo does. You also will not inherently be as skilled as Gojo is when it comes to technique usage, as we see with the domain statement that I covered earlier. And here's something that is pretty interesting that I'm going to give you guys my opinion on. I honestly think that Gojo was not sure if he was the strongest because he's Gojo, or if he is Gojo because he's the strongest. And the reason I say this is because we know that back in Shibuya, right before Gojo was being sealed, when he looked into the eye of the prison room, he didn't see his reflection back at himself. I think that this was basically Gege's way of telling us that even when Gojo looks at himself, he's not sure what he sees. It's not outright blatant that this is the answer that we're seeing, but I think that this is Gege showing us that Gojo is not sure exactly what he is. Looking at your own reflection and not seeing your face is very telling. Another interesting detail that is probably going to be important but we're not sure yet is that in the recent color that Gege dropped along with chapter 262 is we see Yuta has green eyes. Now, we do know that Gege is colorblind. Gege stated this in the past, but it is sort of strange to me that the first time we see somebody else in Gojo's body other than Gojo, these 6 eyes are magically green rather than blue. Now, could this just be Gege's colorblindness acting up? Of course, but like I said, it just does seem sort of strange that every other time Gege has drawn Gojo's eyes, he got it perfectly right with it being blue, but now he accidentally gets it green. It might be on purpose, might be on accident, but I just thought it was pretty interesting and I wanted to bring it up. And if you have any theories on why Yuta's eyes are green now and not blue, then please let me know in the comments because I genuinely have no idea. But everything that I've told you in this video so far are the reasons that I believe that although Gojo is strong and has the 6 eyes and the Limitless, the reason that Gojo is the strongest is because of himself. His ability to wield his techniques, his own intuition, his own fight sense, and ultimately his own body with his own brain. Even though Gojo has red, blue, purple, the neutral, limitless, infinity, and everything else, even with all of these broken abilities, it isn't just these abilities which is the reason why Gojo is so strong, and Yuta is showing us this currently. Yuta does have the option to change our opinions if he performs better and maybe even outperforms Gojo, although I highly doubt that will ever happen. But one thing that we know for certain that has been confirmed with the release of chapter 262 is that the strength of Gojo's body is contingent on the strength of the wielder. And because of everything I have told you, I 100% believe that Gojo was the strongest because he is Satoru Gojo. Thank you so much for reaching the end of the video, and if you enjoyed, then I would really appreciate it if you leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as I do post videos on different topics that you guys give me and videos that I come up with on my own. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.